Hello, you're welcome to this course on contemporary Christian-Muslim relations. We have been looking in previous lectures on various forms of engagement, of encounters, of relationships, models and factors that have informed our relationships with each other over a period of time that Christianity and Islam have existed with one another. We've talked about how Christians have responded in various ways and the different approaches adopted by different Christian groups and organizations. We've talked about the theological issues that are involved. We talked about the role and place of Scripture in our engagement and our relationships. The question that I want to pose in this lecture is, for Christians to be able to engage with Muslims and Islam, they have to be asking themselves, what form of Islam am I engaging with? Which Islam am I engaging with? Because Islam is expressed in very different ways. And I want to help just in this lecture to describe 5 main ways in which Islam is manifested in our contemporary times, for Christians to know that there is not one single approach. There can be no one single way of relating with Muslims everywhere for all time, because Muslims are different. They understand and express Islam in different ways. For this lecture, I'll talk about the different ways, what I call the faces of contemporary Islam. And I'll talk about 5 of these faces of contemporary Islam. Islam, as we already know, has articles of faith and has pillars of faith. And I don't want to bore you with those things, but the articles of faith and pillars of faith are essential part of Islam. The belief in God, belief in angels, belief in prophets, belief in Scripture, belief in the last day, and the 6th belief, which is not official but important, is predestination. Similarly, on pillars of Islam, we have the Shahada, or the witness, we have the Salat or the prayer, we have Sa'um or fasting, we have Zakat or almsgiving, we have Hajj or pilgrimage, and then 6, which is important but not official, is Jihad or struggle or warfare. So these are the traditional beliefs and duties, articles of faith and acts of worship in Islam. As a Muslim, you don't just believe, you act out your belief. You express them in acts of worship. And that is where we have the pillars. So in other words, you have the beliefs that sit or rest on 5 pillars. 5 beliefs resting on 5 pillars. The first phase, which I have also tried to pattern the phases along 5, but also with a 6th important phase of Islam that we shall look. But talking about 5 phases, the first phase of Islam that Christians should be aware of in contemporary times is the missionary phase. Islam is a missionary religion, and it is the 2nd missionary religion after Christianity. Muslim missions was not for a long time organized, but Quran talks about Muslims going out to invite people to the straight path. They have to invite people to the straight path, and inviting people to the straight path includes missions, da'wah. For a long time, as I said, Christian missions were organized, but Muslim missions were not as organized. It is the Christian missions that really are working Muslim organizations to the call of da'wah in the Muslim communities and societies. And Muslim missions began to be formulated in the last century and organized properly, especially in the second half of the last century. You have the purpose of this main mission of Islam or da'wah is obviously to bring in more people into the Islamic faith, to seek to evangelize, to win, to convert people into Islam. And so for the missionaries of Islam, they seek to present a very good face, a beautiful face, a message that is appealing to ordinary people. And that's the work of the missionaries. They also learn from a lot of the methods used by Christian missions, and they also engage in mission projects and works, building of mosques, provision of scholarships for education, funding of NGOs, building of schools, hospitals, providing social services of all kinds, and these are all essential part of Islamic mission. Therefore, missions in Islam has been just as organized in the last century, in particular, as Christian missions in the past. The first phase, therefore, is the missionary phase. So if Christians are talking about the missionary Islam, the question should be, how do we engage with missionary Islam? Muslim missions also include polemics, because they have to prove that Islam is better than Christianity, as Christians have done with Islam for many centuries. Should we respond with polemics also as Christians, or should the approach be a different approach? These are questions that Christians have to adopt in the contemporary world when we are talking about engaging with Islam. The second phase is the mystical phase. The mystical phase of Islam is very, very important. And we need to know that, because many Christians don't know of the mystical phase of Islam. It is actually the most predominant, the most dominant phase of Islam in and around the Muslim world. It was inspired by Christian mysticism, and it projects the spiritual and charismatic phase of Islam. The mystical phase puts less emphasis on scripture or texts or law, and it takes the supernatural seriously. The mystical phase believes in miracles, dreams, visions, exorcism, visitations to shrines, spiritual exercises, music, chanting, and poetry. The mystical phase of Islam is what I call charismatic Islam. They believe in signs and wonders. They believe in sheikhs and masters, just like charismatic Pentecostal Christians talk about the man of God who can perform miracles. Mystical Muslims also believe in the idea of healing. And therefore the Quran is used in various ways, not just as a textbook for study, but as a source of healing and blessing. And they produce charms and amulets, holy water from verses of the Quran for people to use. So the Quran is more than just a book in the hands of the mystics. They engage in exercises, in chanting, in spiritual dances. So to engage with the mystical Islam, one has to really engage at the spiritual level, at the prayer level, at the level of knowing that this is not about going to win with debates and arguments. It's about demonstrating the power of God, not just in your words, but also in your actions and in your life. So dealing with missionary Islam is different from dealing with mystical Islam. And we need to know as Christians that we cannot think of Islam as one single monolithic entity.